Hello, my name is Sarika.
And my name is Michael.
And this is Today in Years Past.
This is a podcast that dives into events that have happened on today's date in years past. Anything from technology and inventions to public figures or societal firsts. So if you enjoy the funner side of history, come join us today at Today in Years Past. Okay?
All right, cool. So today we're going to be talking about June 11th, because that is today's date. And so, yeah, we're just going to dive in. We're going to start out with me, Sarika, and then we're going to just ping pong back and forth. What do you think?
Yeah, that sounds good to me. Hope you guys are ready for it.
All right, let's see how this goes. Okay, so we're going to start out with June 11th, 1920. On that date, an icon was born. So her name is Hazel Scott, and she, like I said, a music icon. And so the reason that I'm bringing her up, and I think that we should just kick off this podcast with her, was because she's the first Black woman to host her own TV network show called The Hazel Scott Show. And she made history by doing this. So she was born on June 11th, 1920 in Trinidad. Her mom was a classically trained pianist, a saxophonist, and a music teacher.
Oh, so she was very musically surrounded.
Yeah. Just like from the very beginning. And then her dad was a professor. And so really, really like highly educated, just icons of humans, just surrounded constantly.
Yeah. And you said she was born in 1930?
1920.
Okay.
Yeah, so with that being said, like you said, that she was just surrounded constantly. She actually was able to start to play the piano by ear at age 3.
That's incredible.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah, I cannot imagine, like even in today's technology, like watching a YouTube video trying to learn how to play like guitar or something.
Exactly.
Like that is so difficult. I can't imagine being 3 years old just listening to a note and being like, oh, that's impressive.
Amazing, right?
Yeah, that's incredibly impressive.
Incredible. Oh my God, I thought the same. So gifted from such a young age. So then after she was in Trinidad and everything, she moved to Harlem, New York, whenever she was, a little bit younger. Harlem, if you don't know, is a vibrant historic neighborhood in New York, has a rich culture, and so even more surrounded by that just really rich music scene and just completely surrounded at all times. And so with her parents, and now she has a community, and so she's just surrounded by just lively culture.
Yeah,
so.
Very musically inclined like place in Harlem, New York. Okay.
Yeah,
very cool.
Very, very cool. Whenever she was 8 years old, she got into Juilliard's prep division, and she was 8 years old. This is a prestigious university, and she was actually one of the youngest students ever to be enrolled there. Ever.
Even into like current standards. Like,
I believe so.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
Isn't that amazing?
So she's 8 years old at a university.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was a prep division, but even still.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is a prep division? Do you know?
I don't. That's a good question. All right.
I actually don't know what that is.
Okay. So it's basically what it sounds like. It's a college prep school. So it literally just prepares students for college education. But even still, that at 8 years old?
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
That is incredible.
Typically, I'd imagine you do that whenever you're in like high school or so, like 17, 18.
Yeah,
like,
kind of
around
like
that.
thinking about going into college, figuring out what you're going to do as a career path. Like when I was 8 years old, I was not thinking about school.
Right, right.
Or like passionate about music or anything like that. I was just kind of...
Exactly. Yeah, no, but she was doing it at the age of 3, and then at age 8, she was already going into Juilliard's. Amazing. Like I said, an icon. With that being said, by her teens, she was already sharing the stage with jazz legends like Art Tatum, Fats Waller, Billie Holiday. And she was a teenager.
Wow.
She was just just breaking barriers constantly. And with all of those jazz legends, I'm sure most have heard of Billie Holiday, but
Yeah.
one that I was looking into is Art Tatum. He was an American pianist. He was considered one of the great technical virtuosos in jazz.
That's a fun word.
It just basically means like someone that's prominent in that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And he actually played the song, or played on the piano, Over the Rainbow. And it's not the one you're thinking of.
Yeah.
Not Somewhere Over the Rainbow, but this one was written in 1939 and was very, very, very famous for that time because of the way that he was able to play piano. And she was also paired with that too by, oh my God, I'll tell you something about her later. But
Okay.
they were just, able to riff off each other, and they just had a really good time, honestly. It's just amazing to see. And then a Billie Holiday as well, who was very famous at that time. And even now, her most famous song is I'll Be Seeing You. Pretty prominent one.
Really? That's her song? Mm-hmm. Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible.
Right?
Okay, I do know what that song is.
Yeah. So that was Billie Holiday that sang that song, but...
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But still, Hazel Scott was playing with the person who sang that.
Oh, I see. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Just kind
Yeah.
of like setting the bar for what she was actually involved in.
Exactly.
That's incredible.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. And as a teenager...
Yeah, that's got to be...
And so even also with the what she was doing in her teen years, she was playing at this high society, cafe society club. It was a nightclub in New York that was basically created to showcase African American talent and played to non-segregated audiences. And it was open for 10 years from 1938 to 48. So it made a huge impact. It was really great, like that they were able to obviously create a space as a community space for everyone to play and, have a good time, but also like really prominent in the civil rights movement and, saying, this is not right. We need to create non-segregated spaces where everyone can enjoy together.
Yeah, and they can be themselves and not have to worry about the outside societal way things are going.
Exactly. Yeah. And so in her teen years, she was playing in that, and she was breaking boundaries again, and, pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible. And bringing people together.
Yeah. And so this is something that I thought was really cool. So when she was there, and even before this, she became really famous for being able to play two pianos at once.
What?
Right?
How is that even possible?
I don't know. Oh my God. Like, I watched a couple videos of it and totally suggest all of you guys watch too. But she literally has she's sitting between the two pianos and they're diagonal towards each other. And she can play both of them. And
one hand on each.
One hand on each.
Whoa.
Incredible.
I can't even play one.
Me neither. Yeah, I can't even imagine. And so obviously, Hollywood noticed. They noticed her rising to fame and her playing the music with the greats. And so they started asking her to start playing roles. And she was like, yeah, of course. But they kept on asking her to play roles of like the singing maid or, going into roles that were very stereotyped. And she was
at that time.
Exactly. Yeah. And she was like, hell no, I am going to play myself or something with dignity because I'm not going to succumb to that, even if it's Hollywood, which is like, good for you. That's amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's keeping her foot down.
Exactly.
Not taking anything.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah. And so she insisted on playing herself. She picked her own outfits, which was huge at that time. And she stood up for herself. You can actually see her playing as a nightclub pianist, which she already had experience in her teen years. And that was in Something to Shout About in 1943. Yeah, she always just insisted on playing with dignity and respect and didn't take no for an answer, which...
Good for her.
Good for her. Bringing us to July of 1950, which is the reason I brought her up in the first place. She was the first Black woman to host her own TV network show called The Hazel Scott Show. This was played on Dumont TV. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
I've never heard of that.
Me neither.
Actually.
I hadn't heard of that. It only ran for, again, 10 years, but 1946 to 1956. And so it rivaled a bunch of other networks like NBC, CBS, and other established networks. But it only ran for so long because it ran into a lot of broadcasting costs. I went to a little bit of a wormhole about that, but it was a lot of information. But anyways, there's a lot of cost that goes into broadcasting that I didn't realize.
I'm sure there is.
Yeah, and so they just couldn't really get their footing with it, and so they only had a short runtime. But even so, whenever they had their time on TV, they broke a lot of barriers as well, especially like having Hazel Scott on their TV network.
Yeah, of course.
So,
and she was the first woman of color to be able to have her own show on this broadcasting network.
yep, yeah.
That's a huge deal.
Exactly. Yeah. And so Hazel Scott show played 3 times a week. It was Monday, Wednesday, Friday around, I think it was like 7 o'clock, something like that, right after dinner. Of course, she played her music. Viewers watched her perform live, often backed by jazz greats like Charles Mingus and Max Roach. I don't know very much about them, but again, they're like Billie Holiday, very big names in the jazz scene. Yeah, I think the show ran for 15 minutes, and she would just play music and break boundaries and have a great time and play alongside other people and play 2 freaking pianos at once. But the Variety magazine wrote, quote, Hazel Scott has a neat little show on this modest package. The most engaging element is the Scott's personality, which dignified yet relaxed and versatile. And so I think that just sums up who she is. She doesn't take no for an answer. She's dignified, and her personality is just contagious. Just amazing. So it goes without saying that the Hazel Scott show was truly a gem of its time, and great music that stood for what was right.
Good.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Isn't it? Yeah. And so, but unfortunately, in the height of McCarthyism, this was a anti-communist time where basically people in the U.S. around like the late 1940s, Senator Joseph McCarthy was alleging communists were infiltrating the U.S. and suspected a lot of people, especially film, government, universities, and more, just big like name things. He was basically suspecting that communists were coming to the country and saying that they are Russians and all this stuff.
Oh,
and so
this sounds familiar.
And so they basically pointed their fingers at Hazel Scott and was like, oh, you're one of them. And so unfortunately, all of the sponsors for her show backed out because they didn't want to be associated.
Of the political backlash.
Exactly.
That's upsetting.
Yeah. And so unfortunately, it got shut down, but she did have a good runtime. I think it was a couple months. But regardless, with it being such a short time, she revolutionized TV for people of color and paving the way for so many people along the way. And then after that, she just continued playing her music. And like always, she refused to play to segregated audiences. And she was super influential in the civil rights movement. In 1957, she moved to Paris to escape America's racial politics, which is fair. And then she came back to New York in 1967, but never regained the television spotlight. But honestly, she had a run, and like she did so much. And yeah, she passed away in 1981. She was 61, but regardless, she left all her recordings, and you can still hear her blend of jazz and classical magic, and she was just a fantastic piano singer and just broke barriers for future generations to come.
Yeah. Well, happy birthday, Hazel Scott.
Yeah, happy birthday, Hazel Scott. And just the best way to kick off this podcast.
Yeah, that's an incredible way to kick it off. Let's go.
All right, cool. Well, what you got for me?
Well, that is a crazy... I don't think I'm going to be able to top that. My topic is completely different.
All right, let's hear it. I'm excited.
So, June 11th, we're going up to 2001.
Okay.
This was the first time that the Nintendo GameBoy Advance was introduced to the U.S.
Love that.
I actually had one of these as a kid. Did you ever have one?
No, I didn't.
Oh, I had one. I played it so much. Probably too much, honestly. Used to have Pokemon for it and all that, so.
I had the one that was like a square. I don't know what that one was.
Oh, did it flip? Flip open? It had the little light? Yeah, that was a Game Boy Advance, but that was the SP. I don't know what the SP stood for. I should probably figure that out. But
no idea.
Yeah, that came like 2 years after the Game Boy Advance.
Okay.
I'll get into it, but they got backlash because of the Game Boy Advance. Nintendo, the company.
Got some tea.
All
right.
I got like little bits of tea. Yeah, so it was created by Nintendo, which, if you don't know, Nintendo is a multinational Japanese video game company in Kaito. I don't know if I'm saying that.
Kyoto?
Kyoto?
Kyoto.
Kyoto.
Yeah.
I did not know how to say that.
I'm pretty sure.
You might be. Yours sounded way better than mine. So actually, Nintendo started out as a small trading card company in 1889 and became a massive success by 1959. And later they partnered with Disney, which I didn't know.
Wow.
I had no idea that they were partnered with Disney at all.
It makes sense. They're like two superpowers.
I mean, now, well, Disney is. Nintendo at the time wasn't.
No? Okay.
You know, they got pretty big, but from my understanding is they partnered with Disney to get to that level, you know.
So Disney was kind of taking a chance on them in a way?
It's kind of sounded like that. Like they were partnering with Disney to kind of get more publicity, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So like this happened in 1962, and this was the first time that they were able to open up their stock to the public. And so from that point on, they actually became kind of like the namesake of the gaming industry. So like Nintendo is like the big behemoth of the gaming industry, if you want to think of it that way. And I found it interesting. I was actually looking up for what Nintendo actually translated to. And the only thing I could find was it says leave luck to heaven, which kind of implies that it was like, you know, we'll see what happens kind of thing, you know? So like the company was just created on a whim and they were like, we'll see what happens.
Whoa.
And I just thought that was so interesting. It started off as a trading card company, like a really small trading card company.
Really?
And grew into this massive video game industry that it is today.
That's crazy. So why didn't they keep going with the trading card of it all?
That is a great question. I don't know.
Okay. Maybe they just saw more traction with the video
You know what
games.
I think it is? I think they were trying to be more modern, you know? So like trading cards were huge back then in like the 50s and 60s. And then as time went on, trading cards, they weren't as cool.
Yeah.
And then like gaming became a thing. Like I'll get into it a little bit in a couple sentences, but
Sure.
with Atari, that's another video game company.
I've heard of that.
Yeah. So I'll touch base on them a little
Okay.
bit, but not too much. But getting back to the Game Boy Advance. So Nintendo created this handheld gaming device, and it was kind of revolutionizing gaming in the early 2000s. Like nobody's ever had anything like this before. They had the Game Boy Color, which was like pretty advanced for its time, but this was like far beyond what that was.
Yeah,
like it
sounds like
was
it.
so much more advanced, which hence the name Game Boy Advance, you know? So I thought that was cool. And this was obviously it wasn't the first handheld gaming device.
Yeah.
Literally 50 years ago, in 1976, Mattel Electronics.
Yeah.
It's the same company that created Barbie, by the way.
Wow.
So Mattel, like they created Hot Wheels and Barbie and all that. They created this game called Auto Racer, which consisted of just 3 switches for steering gears and just turning the game on.
Wow. And this was the first video game?
This was the very first handheld console.
Wow, that really wasn't that long ago.
I know, right?
That's
1976.
Wow.
Basically, it just consisted of a small screen depicting cars as little dots, and it made car sounds. And all you had to do is like you steered your dot to
Oh my
avoid other
goodness.
dots, and that's all it
Wow.
was. And this whole thing ran on a 9-volt battery,
Oh my god.
which was kind of crazy back then, I feel.
Don't like smoke detectors use that now?
Yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
That's crazy.
So I thought that was an interesting fun fact and rabbit hole to go
Yeah.
down. As I was saying before, the Game Boy Advance was a successor to the Game Boy Color. It was wildly popular in the 90s due to its introduction to more colorful graphics, and it had an extensive library of games, including Pokemon, which became incredibly popular in the 2000s. The Atari Lynx was actually the first handheld console to introduce colored graphics in 1989 and included backlighting, which is something
Revolutionary, I'm sure.
Yeah, that was incredibly revolutionary in the early or late 80s, early 90s. The Lynx failed to take off actually because of hardware issues, and it didn't have as many games. So people were getting kind of like, it was just very stagnant and people weren't really following it as much. And there were faults within the company itself. They were just kind of like speeding up the production of these things. And I guess it wasn't designed as well as it could have been if they had just spent more time on it. And I think
Gotcha.
that's ultimately what led to their downfall. And then Nintendo kind of surpassed them.
Okay.
But Nintendo didn't have a lot of money, so they couldn't afford to like use this technology to create the backlighting
Yeah.
or any of these other features that Atari was able to do.
Wow.
So they settled with, these lighter graphics, no backlighting,
Yeah.
But the technology that they created
Yeah.
in this handheld device was able to like pave the way into future gaming, which I thought was really cool.
That's so crazy to think about because, like, I've heard of Atari, but I've heard it, like, in an offshoot, just seeing it because of Nintendo, if you know what I mean. Like, Nintendo is such a large, like, huge name now that,
Yeah.
like, it's kind of unfathomable to think that, like, they didn't have the money and they kind of settled for something less than this other company that we don't even really know about now.
I know, right? Like
So-
Atari is just really associated with like arcade games now.
Yeah.
And that's
yeah.
pretty much it.
Right.
As far as I know, like I don't think maybe Nintendo kind of absorbed them into
Maybe.
their company. That's possible.
Possible, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know.
That's crazy. Wow.
Yeah. The Game Boy Advance was actually created under the direction of Gunpei Yokoi. He led their portable gaming division and ended up leaving Nintendo before the Game Boy Advance was actually developed. He left because of just internal conflicts within the company and his own, own personal reasons. He just kind of left. But he was the main reason that they kept building handheld technology because he helped become the visionary of like what Nintendo could be and what they are now.
Yeah.
Because they're hugely associated with their handheld devices and even like just console games in general. Like they are just like a home name at this point.
Yeah.
Like everybody knows who they are,
Right.
even people that don't play games.
Yeah.
So Gunpei, even though he ended up leaving, his influence remained, and he helped pave the groundwork for Nintendo's handheld gaming philosophy. And so they just kind of went with it. So Nintendo was broken up into two different teams. The R&D 1 team, which focused on 3D graphics. That was kind of like for Nintendo 64, GameCube, those kind of things. And then there was another handheld division, which focused on portability and efficiency with handheld gaming.
Okay.
And so that's where the Game Boy Advance came from.
Gotcha.
Internally, there was pressure to make the system powerful enough to run impressive 2D graphics, but not so complicated that it would increase costs significantly, which is something that Nintendo desperately
Yeah.
could not afford.
Right,
Like
yeah.
they needed something that was powerful, but not overly expensive to
Gotcha.
create.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of internal struggles for that. Yeah. And so actually the architecture behind the Game Boy Advance, I'm not going to go too deep into it because there's a lot of stuff in here that I didn't understand.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, but one thing that I thought was impressive is it had a 32-bit processor which allowed for more data to be carried at once, meaning that the Game Boy Advance could run smoother and more complex calculations, which is why the graphics were so much better than previous handhelds before it. To put that in perspective, a 32-bit processor, like we use 64-bit processors now in modern computing. So this was actually pretty kind of powerful.
Advanced, yeah.
Yeah, it's more advanced for what it was. I actually saw online that it actually ran a 16-bit processor, but there was something with the architecture that made it clock at 32 bits. I don't really know exactly.
Okay.
I'm a nerd, but I'm not that big of a nerd. I don't know what they were talking
Don't
about.
know. I have no idea.
So, but it is impressive, like the power that was behind it. The Game Boy Advance featured stereo sound with up to 8 channels for sound effects and music. It wasn't as advanced as home console systems, but the GBA's audio was highly praised for its quality. Each of the 8 channels could generate different types of sound. The setup gave GBA games more surprisingly catchy music and sound effects. Many games like The Legend of Zelda are kind of praised for their memorable soundtracks.
Yeah.
So
I have never played, but that's iconic. I can hear it in my head.
yeah, a lot of people can you can hear the theme song to
Oh,
Legend
yeah.
of Zelda, and you just kind of know it's from that.
Classic.
The Game Boy Advance was priced at $99.99 in the U.S. at launch. The original Game Boy Advance sold approximately 40.5 million units worldwide, and that spiked Nintendo's stock significantly as they ended up making about $95 million after the release. The Game Boy Advance's hardware opened the door to some incredible games, including The Legend of Zelda, Metroid Fusion, the Pokemon series, Mario Kart, Mario Party, Mario Golf, Mario Tennis. So many Marios.
Sounds like they like Mario.
And it's funny, I was looking at the fact that Disney partnered with Nintendo, and I noticed that Mario and Mickey Mouse are both wearing overalls, and I'm wondering if that...
Whoa.
Yeah, right? I was wondering if that was like kind of a coincidence, or if one was... Well, obviously Mickey Mouse came before, but
Yeah.
I'm wondering if the overalls on Mario were influenced
Ooh, maybe.
by the overalls that were on Mickey Mouse.
Maybe.
You know?
Yeah.
Because
Interesting.
that's like their poster child.
Yeah.
Mario is everywhere.
Right. And same for Mickey Mouse for Disney.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like that's
Yeah.
their what do you call it? Mascot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, right?
I feel like there's got to be some kind of influence back and forth.
Right.
Yeah.
The Game Boy Advance marked a major step forward in handheld gaming, offering a significant leap in graphics quality, processing power, and game depth. There were some initial challenges. There was a lot of consumer backlash, like I was kind of alluding to before, because of the fact that they didn't have a backlight in the gaming console.
Oh,
So,
the
like,
T, yes.
yeah, this is the T. So, yeah, so they didn't have a backlight, and so a lot of people were playing these games in, not well-lit rooms because they would get obsessed with it, like
Sure.
I did, and play it until, like, the middle of the night.
Right, but they couldn't see it.
And you can't see it, yeah, so it's difficult to play. And so they got a lot of consumers being like, hey, you got to add a backlight to this or something.
Right.
And apparently a lot of people complained that it wouldn't fit well in their pocket.
Oh my God.
So that's, that was like one of the problems that they were facing. And so that's why 2 years later they created the Game Boy Advance SP, which is the one that you were talking about.
Yeah.
And that's why it does that little foldy thing. So it fits better in your pocket and it has a little button for the backlight.
Yeah. I remember that being really cool. Because we would go on like really long road trips and I would just like switch my little light on when it got dark out.
Oh, same. Yeah. I remember there being a meme about, when you're gaming in the backseat of your mom's minivan or something and you're waiting for the light from the street lights to hit so you can play your game a little bit more. So, yeah, the Game Boy Advance SP kind of eliminated the need for having street lights when you're riding around playing a game.
It's like the most millennial thing.
It really is. Interestingly, the criticism that Nintendo got, they used for future design. So with like the introduction of like the Nintendo DS, for example, like it had a constant backlight. Yeah, going forward, that's what their console started doing. And then other consoles like PlayStation, they came out with the PlayStation Portable, and that also had a backlight. So I feel like they kind of paved the way to handheld gaming because it was such a major success.
Totally.
At that point.
Yeah.
That's
Very
what
cool.
That's what happened in 2001
on
June 11th.
Nice. We're just paving the way left and right.
Oh yeah.
That's really cool. I had no idea. Honestly, I think it's kind of cool that it did come out in the summer because I feel like the summer of 2001, I feel like I remember that summer pretty well, but regardless, I feel like with the Game Boy coming out in the summer, it's just like people were taking those road trips and like, playing with their friends and stuff. And so being in like the summer, I don't know, I feel like it fits.
It was perfect too because like that's when kids are off school.
Exactly.
You can just go and get this cool game.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Oh, they timed it perfectly.
They did. They timed it perfectly. I wonder if they did that on purpose.
Oh, I wonder.
Because like either that time or like around Christmas time, I feel like would be the best options.
Yeah.
But.
Oh yeah, smart.
Yeah. It was definitely a turning point in my childhood.
Yeah,
like
same.
I had that and I played it for hours. Like I literally remember sitting in my room being like, technology can never get better than this.
And look where we're at now.
Look where we're at now.
That's crazy. Well, we're going back, to 1957. So on June 11th, 1957, German Chocolate Cake Day was established.
Whoa, German chocolate cake. All right.
Yep. So it was established that day. So the reason it was that day was because Miss George Clay published a recipe in the Dallas Morning News newspaper as the recipe of the day. And so the German chocolate cake was picked as that recipe of the day. I will note that some sources say June 11th, but also some say June 3rd. So just, a little forewarning.
Okay.
But yeah, anyways, this is a popular column in the newspaper, and the newspaper has been around since 1885, and so it has a very solid grounding within the Dallas community and everything, and so everyone reads it. But yeah, so the readers went nuts for the for the rich chocolate layers topped that gooey coconut pecan frosting, and just like that, a new star cake was born.
Wow.
Yeah, it rapidly gained popularity, and in the late 1950s, 1960s, the cake showed up in church suppers, family barbecues, and potlucks across Texas and beyond. It instantly became a staple. I mean, I'm sure I've had
chocolate. Yeah, I've had German chocolate cake before.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, right? Oh, so good.
Yeah, there's actually that cake place that's in Durham that we went to that had German chocolate cake.
I don't remember what it's called, but I know what you're talking about.
I can't remember the name of it either, but I remember we had their cake and it was very good.
Oh, so good. So good. Oh, I kind of want one now. But yeah, some backstory on this. Did you know that German chocolate cake isn't actually German?
It's not German?
No.
Really?
It's American.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Okay, get this. So it was actually named after a person. So his name was Samuel German, which is his last name. His last name was German. So it's German Chocolate Cake Day. It was originally German's chocolate cake.
Oh, and they just dropped the S for
Yeah.
some reason?
Yeah. Like over time and everything. But
I really thought it was from Germany. I thought it was
No.
like a German dessert, and
Yeah.
that's why they called it German chocolate cake, because that makes sense.
right, yeah, you'd think, but no. I always thought that as well. And
That's
so
funny.
I was looking into this and I was like, wow.
Do you
had no
know
idea.
if he was German?
No, actually, he was not German.
He was
a-
not German, and his
No.
last name was German.
Yeah.
That shouldn't happen.
No, he was an English American baker, and he baked for Baker's Chocolate Company. He invented German chocolate cake in 1852, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it was popularized by that article that Miss George Clay posted in the published, I guess, not posted.
Yeah, you're not posting things back then.
No.
It's a lot more work than just to post stuff.
So she published that on June 11th, 1957. But yeah, no, it was originally made, it was invented in 1852. And the reason that it became so popular was because he used a new type of chocolate, which was higher in sugar. So bakers wouldn't have to put more sugar in the recipe, because around that time, sugar was kind of hard to come around. And it was a little bit more expensive. And
really?
Yeah. And so putting it straight into the chocolate would reduce the need for more chocolate into it. And so Samuel German was like, ooh, let me make this easier for you guys. And so he made a new chocolate. And that was what was used in the German chocolate cake.
Wow, so he was like the Willy Wonka back then.
Literally, yeah.
That's crazy.
Exactly. Yeah, up until that point, there was only one type of chocolate used at that company. And the company, or this was basically revolutionary for the 1800s. And so the company, the Baker's Chocolate Company, wanted it really badly. And they were like, we want the rights to this. And so he sold that cake or the recipe to that company for $1,000 in that time, and which is worth $41,000 in today's money.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So he spent the equivalent of $40,000+ for this recipe.
So other way around, the company bought the recipe off of Samuel German because they want the rights to this
okay.
recipe.
Okay. So, but the company spent $40,000 just for the recipe.
$41,000. Yeah.
I don't know if that's like.
I don't either.
That's so. I'm just trying to think about that in today's standard. Like, is that like a normal thing?
I have
back
no
then? Like,
idea.
would they just do that? Like,
Yeah.
how big was this company? Do you know?
Pretty big.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
Well, if that's the case, then
Yeah.
still though, that seems like a
Yeah.
lot. $40,000 for a recipe. I guess if it's doing well, it sounds like it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, like people are raving about it. So
I think it's like the equivalent of like Nestle today.
really,
Yeah.
back then. Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a massive company. Then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so they wanted that cake recipe. And actually, get this. Whenever the recipe first came out, it was advertised as, in quotes, palatable, nutritious, healthful, and a great favorite for children.
Oh, of course it is. It's chock full of sugar and chocolate.
But it said healthful.
Healthful?
Healthful.
I don't think so.
Right? Yeah, get that German chocolate cake was healthful.
It was a very healthy cake.
Don't get me wrong, it's delicious, but
It is, yeah.
she's not healthful.
Yeah, you can't eat chocolate cake as
Right.
a meal.
No. A little bit of backstory on the Baker's Chocolate Company. It was one of America's first baking chocolate brands, and it was originally named Hannon's Best Chocolate when it was originally founded in 1764. I think that's older than freaking America.
Yeah, by like 10 years.
Yeah, dude. And it was founded by John Hannon and James Baker. John Hannon went on a voyage because freaking older than America. They were going on voyages at the time.
That's just the thing to do back then.
So they went on a voyage for cocoa, and he never returned.
It just disappeared?
Yeah.
Oh, so this story's got mystery to
Yeah.
it. Whoa,
Yeah.
this got crazy.
I know, right? His wife ended up selling the company, the rest of it, to James Baker, which is whenever he renamed it. And then after that, Kraft bought the company because Kraft does everything.
Wait, like Kraft cheese? Mm-hmm. They bought that? Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
Yeah, they bought it in 1989, and they've owned it ever since.
Oh, so they still own it?
Yeah.
Really? I
Yeah.
didn't think Kraft owned any like dessert brands.
I think they own a lot more than we think.
They probably do.
Yeah.
Are they owned by another? Like, are they owned by like Procter and Gamble or anything like that?
I don't think so. I think Kraft is one of the big ones. I'm pretty sure.
Is it? I know Procter and Gamble owns like 30 plus companies.
Yeah, yeah. And I think Kraft is the same. I think they own a bunch of things too.
That's okay. You can curse if you want.
A shit ton of brands as well.
There you go.
So every year on this date, people celebrate by baking or buying slices of this classic cake. Yeah, it felt fancy enough for special occasions, but comforting enough to become an instant favorite. There you go.
Cool.
Happy German Chocolate Cake Day.
Happy German Chocolate Cake Day. Go get some chocolate cake and enjoy yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Break out the Game Boy Advance too while you're at it.
What we got next?
All right, so we're making a slight pivot.
Okay.
We're going to the year 1965.
Ooh.
And I'm about to talk about a band.
Okay.
And I want you to take a wild guess as to what band you think I'm going to talk about.
Ooh. I don't know why my mind just goes to like NSYNC.
No, not NSYNC. That was like 2000 something, I think.
Yep, you are so right.
But very good guess. You're so close.
They're
It's actually the
grandparents.
Beatles.
Oh, cool. I love the Beatles.
Yeah, everybody knows the Beatles.
Yeah,
like
classic.
They're popular even today, and they've been popular since the 60s.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, what I wanted to talk about with them is they were actually announced as members of the British Empire on Today in 1965.
Whoa.
Yeah,
What
which
does
is
that
a
mean?
very big deal. This is which was an honor system used by the British monarch used to commemorate the importance of an individual's contribution to the British community, recognizing outstanding achievements and services.
Whoa.
Interesting that the Beatles got this award, because this was normally appointed to people that were veterans or, part of the civic duties of the British Empire.
Yeah.
And so for the Beatles to get this, it was very groundbreaking,
Yeah.
I guess. It was also kind of like, it was just very different because like this is the first time a rock band has ever received this award.
Yeah, that's like, it seems like it would be unheard of because I feel like it would have like high regard and like people that have done really honorable high achievements. And not to say that the Beatles didn't, but like it seems like it would be privy to like specific types of
Oh yeah. It was a very,
achievements.
very prestigious award.
Yeah.
And it was actually created for World War One.
Oh, wow.
And I'll get into that in a little bit. But alternatively, the MBE, or members of the British Empire, it's now, I've seen it referred to as members of the British Excellence or members of the British Commonwealth because the term empire is no longer deemed accurate.
Oh,
I
sure.
read something that said that the empire is no longer a thing.
Oh.
So I didn't get into much more detail than that. I just
Fair.
wanted to note that. The honor system is actually known as Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, which I thought was just too many words for a sentence, for a name. So Order of the British Empire is like the actual like term that they use. And then members of the British Empire, that's just a ranking system within that. And that's what the Beatles were recognized as. So that's actually one of the lower ranks. Members who were appointed were often given a medal, and these medals corresponded to the ranking system. And they were all designed in different ways. So, for example, like the highest to lowest ranks, or the ranks listed highest to lowest, rather. So you'd have Knight or Dame Grand Cross. Those were like the highest of the tier. And then next below that would be Knight or Dame Commander. And then Commander, Officer, and then Member. So Member was kind of at the bottom tier. But that's where the Beatles kind of came in.
Okay,
So
still honorable for sure.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. To even get this award, to
Yeah.
even be recognized to get it is like incredible.
Yeah.
Like you have to really stand out in the British community's eyes to be able to get this. And it's issued by like the government.
Right.
Not just anybody can get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? The order was originally established in 1917 by King George V, and it was a way of recognizing outstanding contributions during the World War I effort. So this was given, like I said, to veterans or service members within the war, or very prestigious people that have helped the British economy, or basically to just help with the World War efforts.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. It was an award to really showcase the value that the British Empire had for the people specifically veterans
Yeah.
and commanders and all that.
Right.
I think that's why they have those names, like commander.
Yeah.
And that,
Right.
So
Yeah, it makes
kinda-
sense, like the ranking system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, they still give out these awards.
Oh, wow.
Like they still appoint people to members of the British Commonwealth.
Gotcha.
Is what it's now known as.
Yeah.
But I couldn't find a list of people.
Huh.
I struggle to find that.
Interesting. I feel like they'd make that public because they want to like commemorate and like really put them on a pedestal. But...
Yeah, you'd think. I ran out of time
That's
trying
fair.
to find it.
No
so,
worries.
so like I wasn't able to find like an actual list. Yeah, so by the 21st century, the Order of the British Empire was mostly rewarded to services in education, acting, and charity work. So it kind of lost its prestigious World War I-esque
Sure.
award, I guess.
Yeah.
or like it's the name. It didn't mean as much. Well,
Like the weight of it?
It did, but like... Yeah, so the Beatles were the first musicians to receive this award ever. And then it was kind of followed by other musicians like David Bowie, for example. Like he
cool.
was offered the award. He turned it down though. He didn't want to
really?
be associated with it.
Oh, yeah, that's
but
fair.
there's other band members. I think Queen was one.
Yeah.
Prince was another.
Okay.
I didn't go into too much detail about how like they won their awards or how they were appointed or anything like that.
It's kind of
but-
ironic that Queen and Prince got it from the British.
Yeah, that is kind of funny. I
Yeah.
thought about that too.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, they're obviously very, very talented and they should get it,
Oh,
obviously.
of course.
But like,
well, yeah, they
just-
got it because like they helped grow Britain's economy.
Oh,
that was like
wow.
one of the main reasons, and that's why the Beatles got it. Is because like they were the most popular group of people in
Right.
the world at this time.
Yeah, yeah.
And so they were making Britain look really good.
Yeah.
So they were good for their overall look,
Mm-hmm.
and they also helped with their economy significantly.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it's almost kind of like today's,
Taylor Swift.
yeah, like
Yeah.
she's literally growing economies. Like people
Yeah.
are trying to get her in their countries,
Right.
just so that they could grow their economy.
Yeah.
And that's basically what the Beatles were back then.
Right. Yeah, so it makes sense that they got this award.
Yeah, and they were appointed by Queen Elizabeth II after Prime Minister Harold Wilson nominated them for the award.
Mm-hmm.
And just to be clear, he was in the government, so like people could only get appointed if they were in the government. Like they had the say, I guess,
Gotcha.
to see who would get nominated for
Yeah.
it. But there was some speculation that Wilson nominated them so that he could attract young voters.
Oh.
And so there was a little bit of backlash about
Yeah.
that. Like, oh, you're only doing this so that you can get your votes kind of thing.
Gotcha.
I thought this was kind of funny. They actually almost didn't even get their awards because the invitations to receive them were buried amongst massive bags of fan mail that they
my
were
God.
receiving.
Wow.
So the Beatles didn't actually even know that they were invited to this until
Wow.
the palace reached out to them and was like, hey, did you get our invites?
Whoa.
And
Oh
they
my
were like,
goodness.
oh, maybe they're somewhere in these massive bags of fan mail.
Oh
And
my
so,
goodness.
Luckily, they were able to get it.
Yeah.
So like I said, they were announced today
Uh-huh.
on June 11th, but they didn't actually get their awards until sometime in October.
Gotcha.
October 26th.
Gotcha.
And the reason that they were getting these awards was because of their... so Britain was acknowledging them for their great impact on global music scene and the fact that they were bringing greatness to Britain, basically.
Yeah.
So like everybody knew that the Beatles were from Britain.
Right.
And they were just like... It was just a great thing for Britain. Like they were
Definitely.
bringing like a very positive energy to them. And they, like I was saying before, they also grew their economy substantially just based on like all the shows that they were doing and stuff.
For sure. Yeah.
The decision to award the Beatles as members of the British Empire was to recognize their contribution to the national economy and British global appeal. So they just made
British look good.
Yeah, they made them look really good. However, there was some backlash about the Beatles being appointed. Some felt that the award was a political move, like I said, about by Prime Minister, who wanted to gain favor with young voters. Others viewed it as a trivialization to the honor, since the MBE was traditionally awarded to veterans and civic leaders. So it just looked like it lost its...
Like shine, I guess.
Yeah, like it lost its appeal and prestige.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Because like people were like, hey, why is this... punk group of kids that don't do anything. You know what I
Getting
mean? Like, it's
this.
just that mentality that they
Yeah.
had. And I can understand it, I guess.
But at the same time, like, they did bring a lot. Like, it wasn't, fighting for the country, so to speak, but it's what they were building up the country in a different way.
Yeah, exactly.
And
But
both
I mean,
are very important and like notable. It's just different.
yeah, for sure.
Okay.
But I think people didn't see it like that,
Yeah,
especially
definitely.
when, it's just like,
The old heads.
I guess. I guess so. But yeah, they just saw it as like a rebellious thing. And
Yeah.
so they actually finally received their awards, like I said, on October 26th, and they were at the Buckingham Palace. So John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr all got the members of the British Empire in recognition of their immense contribution to the music and the British culture. And this all took place during a large ceremony where they were formally presented their medals by Queen Elizabeth II. The announcement was a huge deal, mainly because like this is the first time a musician has ever gotten this award.
Yeah.
So like I said, like this caused a lot of backlash, but it also
Right.
caused a lot of like political gain.
Yeah.
Because again, the Beatles were massively successful and massively known worldwide.
For sure.
So this was a huge political ceremony.
Yeah.
Or sorry, not political ceremony. It was a huge public attraction.
Yeah, definitely.
So, and it drew a lot of public attention. The ceremony added to their already massive fame. So people started to like really chime and be like, "Oh wow, they're..."
So if people didn't know them before, they definitely know them now.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, I'm sure there wasn't anybody that didn't know them.
Yeah, right.
But like, yeah, it was basically that. Like, if they didn't know them, they definitely know them now.
Yeah.
And it was a huge deal. I think that was really cool.
That's really cool. Wow. That's honestly amazing. Like they did so much, and like they were honestly like changing like economies. Honestly, I feel like
Yeah.
that's always really fascinating whenever music groups can have such a big influence.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I wonder if it like kind of still is in the back of their mind. Like Ringo Starr, for example, like he's still touring. And
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, he'll actually be in Charlotte
Oh, cool.
fairly soon.
Huh, I had no idea.
Yeah.
I didn't honestly. How old are they now?
Oh, they're older.
Fair,
I don't know
fair,
exactly
okay.
how old, but yeah, Ringo Starr is still out and about as far as I know.
Cool.
Yeah, I saw something about him touring in Charlotte. So,
Very cool.
yeah, during my research, I was like,
Nice.
oh, that's cool. Yeah, there was some controversy surrounding the whole award, though. John Lennon, in particular, he became disillusioned with the honor. He also is known to have said that it's a mere decoration, and it's kind of insulting, considering like this award was given out to prestigious members of British society.
Yeah.
And so like that was kind of a backslap against
Yeah.
the medal and Britain as a whole.
It's like I can see what he's saying, but at the same time, it's just like, come on, like, put some respect to the name.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, going with their aura of being like the chill rock band dudes, like, it's kind of a part of their vision and like their look.
Yeah.
To kind of be like, it's not a big deal kind of
Not
thing.
a big deal. Yeah, exactly. And
Right.
I think that's why like the quote unquote old heads didn't respect them, which it makes sense.
Yeah.
Like it's like a bunch of rebellious teenage
Right.
kids,
Yeah,
So-
that's fair.
But yeah, John Lennon actually ended up sending his medal back in 1969 as a protest against Britain's involvement in the Nigerian Civil War amongst other political issues that were going on.
Yeah.
So he stood by his beliefs
Yeah.
and actually sent the medal back.
Good for him.
So-
Yeah.
I didn't touch up on this, but people actually that were awarded this title,
Yeah.
they sent their medals back after the Beatles had received theirs.
Really?
Yeah, because of the prestigiousness of it. Like they felt like it lost its value.
Oh.
And so they just sent their medals back.
Whoa.
Basically saying like they shouldn't be getting this.
Whoa.
So,
Oh my God.
yeah, I forgot
And then
to touch
for
up
one
on
of the Beatles to turn around and say, I don't want this either. It's just like everyone's just giving their medals back.
Yeah, right? It's like,
Dang.
damn.
Man. Do you get any kind of award of any sort with that medal, or is it just the honor of the medal? Like, do you get like a monetary?
Oh, I don't
gift?
know. I actually didn't look.
That's fair.
I kind of feel like you don't. I feel like the medal
It's like the thing.
is the thing.
Yeah.
Because like just getting that title,
Yeah.
and then you're probably put on like some sort of roster or something. I don't know.
list.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have no idea.
List
but
of honor.
the list that I couldn't find apparently.
I mean, maybe everyone gave theirs back. That's why you couldn't find
Nobody
it.
has it anymore. Nobody has it.
Ooh.
Everybody gave it back.
Yeesh. Well, that is super fascinating.
Yeah.
The British are fascinating folks.
They are fascinating folks. That is for sure.
Yeah. Well, we're going to launch on forward to 2011.
Ooh, that was fairly recent.
Yeah, kind of.
Like 20...
14
no,
years
14
ago.
years. I cannot do math today.
So, June 11th, 2011, the world's largest car wash happened.
Ooh.
Yeah. So, on June 11th, 2011, car collision centers across North America teamed up to host the world's largest car wash, simultaneously washing cars at over 140 locations in the US, Canada, to break the Guinness World Record that the category was world's largest car wash, multiple venues. And so that's the title of the category that the Guinness World Record has and that they were going for.
Okay.
While I was actually looking into this, did you know that the Guinness World Record is, or the book, the record holder? I don't know.
Yeah, the book, the title.
Yeah. That whole thing, it's 70 years old.
Is it really?
Yeah, dude.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah. Had no idea. It's like I thought it was like younger, but also I thought it was older. I don't know why. Like I could see it being like 30 years old, but I could also see it being like 100 years old.
Yeah, that's fair. I actually thought it was established in like early 2000s because I remember those books being extremely popular when I was in middle school.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I remember being like obsessed with those books. I would constantly grab them and just be like, whoa, this guy did this, or whoa, this girl did this. It was crazy.
Right? Yeah.
It was cool stuff.
I wanted to be in one so badly when I was
did
little.
too.
Yeah.
I did too for a long time.
One day.
One day I'll get in there.
So yeah, the category was most cars washed within 8 hours at multiple venues. And other categories that are similar to that is most cars washed within 8 hours individual, so like one person. And then another one is 8 hours within a team. That one actually hasn't been broken since 1983, and that was a high school. And you'll never guess how many cars they washed.
Oh boy, can I try to guess?
Yeah, go for it. Okay, so it's 8 hours. It was a high school.
So it was one school.
It was one high school.
Okay.
And they had 8 hours. How many cars? So this feels like a weird math problem.
This is like one of those weird find X problems.
All right, what's your guess?
I'm going to say 600.
3,844.
I was way off. There's no way I was way
Isn't that
off.
crazy?
That is nuts.
Very understandably, that record hasn't been broken since 1983. So if there's another high school out there, big team that wants to try to break it, you have to beat 3,844.
That's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. Man, I'm sure those kids were tired. But anyways, going back to the car collision center, then whenever they broke the record for most cars washed at multiple locations. This wasn't the first time they attempted the record. They tried it in 2009 and they washed 4,105 cars. And they came close, but to the record to break it, but they didn't really get it. But even so, it was a really valiant effort. And so for the one in 2011, while they were trying to, get everything together and try to figure out like all their estimates, they were estimating that they would get 2,000 volunteers, and they were aiming to wash more than 4,000 vehicles in 8 hours. And as always, every time they've tried to do this in the past, all of their ticket sales would go to charities, including the Make-A-Wish Foundation and the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation of Canada. And so all of the cars were priced at $10 for a wash. And so, made a lot of money. And so,
So if there was $10 per wash and they said they were aiming for 4,000, so that would have been $40,000 that they could have donated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but that was just estimates. They were just trying to estimate to see like what they could get and like how much they needed to do and all of that. For the actual event, so on that Saturday in June, on June 11th, at least 1,000 employees and volunteers put on their gloves and rolled up their sleeves, and together they washed 4,918 cars in 8 hours. And they shattered I know, right? Isn't that wild? They set the new Guinness World Record for the most cars washed at multiple venues.
Dude, I bet their hands were pruny.
Dude, I can only imagine. I mean, it says they were wearing gloves, so.
Still, though.
Yeah.
Like, gloves only help for so long.
I know, but God, like, I would hope there'd be like shifts or something, but
yeah, there'd have to be. I'm sure
right?
there was.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about like when I wash my own car.
Right?
After like an hour, my hands are already like shriveled up. Even if I am wearing gloves, like it's just
It's inevitable.
feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. But you were saying before like how much they made. They actually raised over $67,000 for charity.
Wow, that's incredible.
Right?
And this was all for Make-A-Wish or just various
So it was
foundations?
Make-A-Wish and the cystic fibrosis in Canada.
Okay, so it's okay.
So
That's
it was those
so
two.
Cool.
Yeah, yeah. And all of that money went to charity, and they raised all of that in 8 hours.
That's incredible.
Isn't that amazing?
Dude, $60,000 in 8 hours. That's nuts.
67.
Almost $70,000
Right?
in 8 hours.
That's incredible. That's really amazing.
That's like a year's salary for some people.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. In a day.
Yeah.
In less than a day.
That's incredible.
Right? But yeah, what makes this so special is that they didn't just break it, but there was the community behind it. So across states, provinces, CarStar teams rallied together, insurance partners, local vendors, neighborhood volunteers, and just everyone that wanted to help. And all those efforts were this valiant effort to like really bring the community together to basically break a record and raise money for charity. Like, so beautiful.
I was going to say, this is like a real fun way to bring a community together.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and all of those efforts meant more wishes for the Make-A-Wish Foundation and increased support for children battling cystic fibrosis in Canada during a single record-breaking day.
Wow.
I know, isn't that incredible?
That's beautiful.
Isn't
I love
it?
that, yeah.
Yeah. So just a little bit of backstory on both of the charities. So the charity for the cystic fibrosis in Canada is called Soaps It Up and has been CarStar's Canada National Car Wash for over a decade. And it's been the main contributor for over $5 million already raised for the company for cystic fibrosis in Canada. And so that organization, Soaps It Up fundraiser.
Love the name.
I know, right? It took place after the granddaughter of the franchise partner was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis. And from there, the relationship with CarStar and Cystic Fibrosis Canada grew. And in 2000, CarStar proudly named Cystic Fibrosis Canada its official charity of choice. And so they've been donating to it ever since, and they've raised a lot of money for it. And
wow.
It's honestly been really, really big for the community and, having all of that money come in and, all of the research that they've been able to do.
That's incredible. So they're still doing it to this day. Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's incredible. I'm sure most know, but the Make-A-Wish Foundation, it was founded in 1980, and it has granted over 200,000 wishes across the U.S., which averages about a wish every 40 minutes.
That's beautiful.
Isn't that?
I love it. That's some good positivity to take with you throughout the day.
Right? Oh, it's beautiful.
Every 40 minutes, someone's getting their wish.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah, like once an hour, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's thanks in part to events like CarStar's Wash for a Wish. So now kind of just zooming forward a little bit more, unfortunately, the 2011 record that the CarStar made, it's been broken, unfortunately, but still very, very noteworthy for its time and, for how much money they've raised. But the record was broken in April 27th, 2019 by Napa Auto Parts, which I'm sure most have heard of.
Yeah, that's a massive company. I hope that did they still do like charity?
They did.
This? Okay.
Yep.
All right. I was thinking like with Napa Auto Parts, like obviously like that's a massive company. That doesn't really seem fair.
No, dude, get this. So they washed 7,197 cars, which is wild.
Wow.
In 8 hours, and they did it over 159 locations, and they raised $82,000.
In 8 hours?
In 8 hours.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah, and they also donated to charity.
That's good. Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure that it was still being donated.
Yeah, no, definitely.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah, yeah.
We're breaking societal norms or breaking records, breaking ground, breaking lots of stuff today.
Just breaking shit.
Just breaking things.
I love it. But yeah, so that was what happened on June 11th, 2011. All right, so bring us home with the last June 11th.
Okay, I've got you as soon as I open it up. So, June 11th, 1962, a very mysterious event took place.
Ooh.
Well, I don't know if I'm I'm going to say mysterious. It was a very crazy event that ended up being kind of mysterious later on.
All right.
The Alcatraz prison escape.
Ooh, okay. Tell me more.
Today in 1962.
Oh my God. Dude, I've heard so much about this, but I don't know very much about it. So tell me more.
Oh, I got you. I will dig into it. I was like really into this actually while I was doing research. But I'm going to go on to a little bit of backstory about Alcatraz, just in case people don't know.
Sure, tell me. And us.
So Alcatraz lasted about 29 years as a federal penitentiary, used to house violent criminals or criminals that were just somehow able to escape all the time. Like, for example, like Al Capone, like he would constantly be escaping prison.
Yeah.
And so they just sent him to Alcatraz. They were like, you got to stop doing this, basically. But he would get away because he was able to influence the authorities there. Like he would just give them money and they would just be like, oh, I don't know what happened. He just like vanished or something. It was pretty crazy. Like the fact that people were able to escape prisons at all is just incredible to me.
I mean, I guess they have time on their hands.
Yeah, but still, like the average person is not getting out of a prison.
Definitely.
But yeah, so Alcatraz lasted about 29 years. It ended up shutting down due to high operational costs, which it makes sense. It's in the Pacific. The waters are rough.
Totally.
You got salt water coming in, and so like it kind of degrades the outside structure of the place, and like it's hard to keep the place going. Yeah, especially when you're dealing. I don't remember what the occupancy was, but lots of people in there.
Totally.
So like you have to get food brought over there and like other supplies. Like it's probably a pain in the ass, I'm sure.
Yeah. I wonder what that commute to work is like.
You know what? I didn't think about that. That's crazy. Like you have to take a boat.
Right,
or
like
a helicopter.
the guards. Yeah.
Yeah.
No idea.
I never thought about that. That's a great point. Yeah, so this held criminals that have been convicted of federal crimes and for breaking federal laws, obviously. Al Capone was a pretty bad dude. Also, George Machine Gun Kelly was there as well. Like
Machine Gun Kelly?
No, not like the rapper.
Oh,
like no, not that guy.
Okay.
No, this is Machine Gun Kelly was like a mob dude that was like
I didn't know that.
Al Capone. Yeah, they were pretty bad dudes. They were like, drug lords, and I don't know a whole lot about that. I didn't dig a lot into them.
That's
but
fair.
Like, yeah, they were basically mobsters. So no, not Machine Gun Kelly the rapper.
Fair.
It was a little too far beyond
That's fair. I keep forgetting the year we're at. Okay, continue.
Yeah. So, the people that were involved in this prison escape, there were 3 people. Frank Morris, and then 2 brothers, Clarence Anglin and John Anglin.
Cool.
There was a 3rd Anglin brother named Alfred, but when I was doing some research, what I found is that he was supposed to go to Alcatraz, allegedly, but ended up getting electrocuted after escaping a different prison.
Oh my God.
I laugh, but I don't mean to. It just, what is going on with this family? Like, they're all escaping jail and stuff. Like
these poor parents. I wonder what they think about their kids.
Oh, well, wait till you hear how many kids there were, dude. There was like, so the Anglin brothers, Clarence Anglin was the older one. He was about 36 during the escape. John Anglin was 34, so he was only a couple years younger. They were both part of a large family of Georgian farmers, and the Anglin brothers were 2 of 14 siblings.
Oh my God.
So this is a large family.
Jeez.
And the Anglin brothers were in and out of Florida jail, Georgia jail, and Alabama jail for various burglary charges. So they were constantly, getting in trouble for burglary and theft and those kind of things.
Jeez.
They often attempted escapes and were sent to Alcatraz because of this. And basically their last straw was a 1958 bank holdup that they got caught for, and then they were like, you guys are going to Alcatraz, you guys keep escaping prison, and then you don't learn your lesson, and you keep doing this. And
my God.
So they were like, we're just going to send you to Alcatraz. And so Alcatraz was basically like, that was the place you went because it was inescapable. They were like, these people need to go somewhere where they cannot escape.
Right,
you guys are going to stay here on this remote island, and we're going to do whatever.
Sure,
and, you guys aren't leaving.
These
Little
guys
did they
have a
know.
different plan. Yeah.
But yeah, touching up on Frank Morris, who was the 3rd
brother.
No, he wasn't a brother. He was the basically the mastermind of the escape.
Gotcha.
He was 35, so he's like between the ages of Clarence and John.
Okay.
So he's kind of like the middle. He was convicted of bank robbery, burglary, and he was serving a 14-year sentence at the time. He had a supposed IQ of 133,
Oh,
which
wow.
is very high.
Yeah.
I tried to look up like what that would be in relation to like Einstein.
Sure.
But it's hard to have direct measurements because like I guess things change over years. Like people are I guess like an IQ test isn't really accurate if you're comparing it from like today to like 60 years ago, I guess.
Oh, interesting.
Things are just different from then to now.
Yeah, because I'm sure you think about things differently, the influences, the society, like everything.
Yeah, I
never really thought about that.
Yeah, I didn't either. I thought that was kind of interesting. I couldn't really find a direct comparison, but I have seen things that said Einstein's IQ level was like something like 160.
Wow.
Which, obviously that's really high.
Totally.
So 133 is pretty high.
For sure.
Just out of curiosity, I'm going to look up what the average IQ is today.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
The average IQ score is generally set at 100. That's about average.
Okay.
See, this is where I got confused because I looked this up earlier and it says there's no theoretical maximum IQ score. IQ tests measure cognitive abilities relative to a population, so there's no inherent upper limit to how well someone can perform. But it looks like some of the highest IQs that were recorded were like 276, 228, 230.
Whoa.
So, yeah.
Who has that IQ? Jeez.
Dude, I don't know.
That's crazy.
Yeah, like I was saying, I think I saw that Einstein's was around 160.
Gotcha.
So, but that was at that
time,
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not really sure. But anyway, so dude was really smart and he was like the mastermind of the escape.
Yeah.
So you said you've heard of this escape, but you didn't know a whole lot of details about it. Okay, so I'm going to get into like how they did it first.
Okay.
They created fake heads to fool the guards, and they created these heads using concrete dust that they got from digging the holes. They would collect the dust and keep it.
Oh my God.
And then they would use soap, toilet paper, toothpaste, and skin tone paint with real hair to create these little fake mannequin heads of themselves and leave them in their bed for the night guards to see.
This legit sounds like a cartoon.
I know, right? Like it's so funny that this is actually something that works.
Right.
Yeah, so that was how they fooled the guards. They dug through the cell walls using stolen spoons, and they slowly chipped away at the concrete. And they also made a homemade drill from a vacuum motor. And I thought that would be incredibly loud. Like, how do you cover up the sound of a vacuum motor as a homemade drill?
No idea.
Well, Frank
scream
Morris,
over it?
Yeah. Well, close. Frank Morris actually used to play the accordion in the evenings to mask the sound of the digging. So he would just sit there playing his accordion, and then he would have his, two cellmates just digging a hole.
Wow. Legit a cartoon. Holy shit.
Right? It's so funny. They used art supplies to create fake grates and to cover up the holes that they dug. And that was basically the gist of it. And they would also steal raincoats, and they kept them in a little hidden compartment after they dug the hole deep enough.
I was going to say.
Yeah, they dug through this hole, and then they kept the raincoats somewhere where they could iron them together as a makeshift raft.
Wow.
And that's what they used to get off the island.
Oh my God, no way.
Yeah. And it's funny because the Mythbusters, you've heard of the Mythbusters,
right?
Course. Yeah. So they reenacted the entire thing.
Mm-hmm. From Alcatraz?
Yeah, from Alcatraz to see if they could escape.
Yeah.
And they tested out creating this makeshift raft out of raincoats, kind of like how the Anglin brothers and Frank Morris did. Mm-hmm. And they actually made it. They
did, really?
Yeah, they were able to send this raft out and then kind of, I guess, steer it. I don't know. You can't drive a raft. So they just kind of steered this raft 2 miles onto the shore of the Marin Headlands, which is just north of the Golden Gate Bridge.
Whoa.
Which I thought was incredible.
Yeah.
So they said that it's plausible that they escaped, but it's not proven.
Yeah.
So there's still a mystery. So what happened was they ended up the two brothers and Frank Morris got into this raft. After they escaped, they got up on the roof or wherever, and then they climbed down onto the cliffside, took the raft with them, climbed in the raft, and then just kind of sailed off without being detected until the next morning when it was roll call. Yeah. And they were like, they're not here.
They're not there. Yeah.
And so a search started that morning.
For sure.
There was nothing found. They got in the raft, and all that was found was bits and pieces of the raft.
Sure.
And I think a couple other things, and that was it. They have never found their bodies. They
Oh
haven't
my
found
God.
anything. So
You think
it's
that, like,
possible that they could have still been alive. I don't know if they'd still be alive today, because even if they had survived, they'd be very old now.
Yeah.
So it is possible that they are alive, but very unlikely.
But if they didn't survive, wouldn't parts of them or the raft or something have washed up ashore?
Well, I mean, parts of the raft did show up.
Oh, did it?
That's how they knew that they created a raft.
Okay.
But there was nothing else to go
Yeah.
off of. There was no definitive proof that they were dead or alive.
Yeah.
So,
Whoa.
but yeah, they searched for, I think, until December 31st, 1979. So they searched for 17 years.
Whoa.
And they haven't found anything else. And the case
Oh my goodness.
remains unsolved to this day.
Whoa. That's super fascinating.
Yeah.
Huh.
And it's one of the most iconic stories in that way, because like it's just it was an inescapable prison, and 3 people escaped.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's just pretty incredible.
I think they would probably be like in their 80s or 90s at this point. So they could still be alive.
Yeah. Well, interestingly enough, the San Francisco Police Department actually received a letter from quote unquote John England in 2013. He would have been about 85 years old at that time.
Okay. But anyone could do that.
I know, right? Like it was around the internet time where like
Yeah.
people could kind of like spoof things like that.
Yeah.
You know? So it is very possible that it's not real at all. Like even before the internet, people were spoofing things. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, it's very, very possible that it wasn't real. But there was a quote that said, the authenticity of a letter received in 2013 purportedly written by John Anglin, one of the 3 men who escaped from Alcatraz in 1962, remains unconfirmed. While the letter claimed the 3 men survived and provided details about their alleged deaths, the FBI was unable to verify its authenticity. So they don't actually know for sure if that came from John Anglin. They don't believe it did, but they don't have definitive proof, especially since the bodies were never recovered.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Whoa, that's fascinating.
yeah.
Yeah, I've always heard so much about that, but never knew very much.
I think there's a movie about it, actually. We should watch it at some time.
Ooh, yeah, I'm down. Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, I wonder if there's like more of the nitty gritty of like how long did it take them to like collect all those things and stuff like that? It's just fascinating.
Yeah, and there was a slow process. They were digging a hole with spoons.
Yeah, exactly.
And concrete. So it was a slow process.
Holy crap.
But kudos to them, man. They made it. They were determined to get out, and they did it. I don't know if they survived, but they got out.
I don't know.
So from breaking records to breaking barriers, breaking social norms, and breaking out of prison.
Yeah.
So nice. We're breaking a lot of things in this episode.
Amazing. Kicking it off.
So yeah, that's it. That's all I've got.
Very cool. Well, thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks for coming by and listening to some little fun history facts that aren't just history, but like the funner side of history.
Exactly. Yeah.
So if you like the episode and you want to talk to us or you want to send us an email, you can do that at
yearspastpodcast@gmail.com.
Or if you want to connect with us on Instagram.
Yeah. It's Today in Years Past.
Yay.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for listening.
Thank you so much. And if you enjoyed this, please share with your friends. It would mean a lot to us. This is our first time ever recording, so pretty excited about it. And it would mean a lot to hear back from you guys.
All right. Bye.
Bye.